こんにちは、マリンスポーツ財団の笹川と申します。You guys thought I was going to speak in Japanese the whole time, huh? Speak English. So my name is Yoshi Sasakawa. I'm the president of Marine Sport Foundation in Japan. We were established in 1964, which makes us over about 65 years in business. Marine Sport Foundation is a public interest organization, a foundation dedicated to promoting marine sports, enhancing water safety, and contributing to the society through sustainable educational initiatives. And our three main pillars of a business is promotion of marine sport, and then water safety and education, and then environment and social initiatives. Those are three main pillars. And we've been really striving towards bringing up the standard in Japan for water safety and reducing any tragedies. But we've seen many young boaters or any, marine sport activists kind of stepping away, especially in their 20s, teens, maybe 30s as well. So we actually pivoted our business model a bit these past couple of years from just promoting water safety and standards. So now, as a foundation, we're actually investing into startups in Japan, particularly in startups that has a balance of business and social initiatives. So, in particular, there's a company in Japan that makes soy sauce. Every Japanese people love soy sauce. Every household has it. There's at least one bottle. So they make these soy sauce from the residues of sake. So when you produce sake, there's a bunch of residue, and these residues are very nutritious. So when they actually get rid of them, the nutrition actually leaks into the ocean and it actually feeds the bacteria and it kills the corals. And that's been a problem. So what this company does is they take those waste, the residues from sake, and they actually put it in the lab and they bioproduce it so in a special way so they can produce soy sauce, a very nutritious and tasty new type of soy sauce. And this residue actually reduces down to less than half, but it's still nutritious. So what they do with this byproduct is they dry it up and they feed it to the pork, the pigs, and they create these branded porks. So now you can enjoy pork and soy sauce in the same meal. Very cost effective. Business wise, it makes sense, and it's very environmentally friendly. And one interesting fact about this company is that the maximum amount that they can produce is actually the limit of the byproducts from producing sake. So they already know how much they can produce up to in a year. So they can't provide soy sauce for an entire country. That's impossible. So what they have done is they actually target only Michelin star restaurants. And in Japan, we have the most amount of Michelin star restaurants in the world. So now they can promote their products saying, oh, Michelin star restaurant chefs actually use our product. So now they're able to sell their soy sauce to the public 10, 20 times X of what you guys see in the supermarket. So it's very high quality soy sauce while saving the corals in Japan. And those are the kind of startups that we kind of look out for and we start investing in those companies, as well as, publicly traded companies as well. So we have been pivoting a bit just from, water safety. So that's the one thing I wanted to share about Marine Sports Foundation and our involvement. And today I want to also share to you guys about Japanese boating license system. So in the past forum, I have talked about the Japanese boating license system. So basically, when you operate a boat here, you need a license. You basically go to a DMV And we don't have different laws depending on the prefectures. So in the US, the states, right? We all have one standard, which makes it easier for boaters to really get educated and under the same standard. So after obtaining a national license, a boating license, then people purchase their boats. And in Japan, boats sold in Japan, 70% to 90%. So roughly 80% of the boats sold here is actually Japanese made, particularly Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, and Tohatsu. These are four main companies that sell about 80% of the boats here. So there's a certain amount of standard already established in Japan. So we don't really have counterfeit or illegal boats running around. I haven't really heard about any um, issues revolving counterfeited items or illegal boats, being a problem in Japan because of these standards that we have. And each boat that you purchase, actually, you need to register your boats to JCI, which is short for Japan Craft Inspection Organization. So every boat is actually registered under that one entity. So we do a pretty good job managing our boats here. Um, I think in a nutshell, that was the entire system, how Japan runs their boating scenes here. So I hope that helped for everyone. Thank you for the time.
So I was looking over the questions for the panel discussion. Question number one speaks to the issue of global compliance and illegally imported boats. Here in Canada, the Canadian Border Service Agency is responsible for investigating stolen vessels or undeclared products that come across the border. And they work in conjunction with the U.S. authorities pretty seamlessly. Once in the country, if we end up with stolen vessels or vessels that shouldn't be here, that becomes a local law enforcement issue. But again, the mechanisms are in place for those agencies to collaborate with the Canadian Border Service and the U.S. authorities as well. So I don't see that as much of a problem here. The two countries with the longest undefended border in the world really cooperate back and forth quite well. Transport Canada is now tightening some of the rules regarding vessel licensing in Canada to keep a better handle on vessels that are in the country. They have started a new program where the small vessel licenses, which used to be free, are now $24 with a renewal every 5 years instead of 10. They also changed the legal requirements of any licensing information change from 90 days to 30. That was really to answer issues with abandoned vessels and SAR investigations. But of course, it serves a law enforcement purpose as well. And it's also changed to the fact that vessels over 6 meters, sailing vessels over 6 meters, whether they're powered or not, as of 2028, will also have to be licensed. They don't currently have to be. So that's sort of tightening up the regulatory part. But as far as vessels being smuggled over, I don't see that as being a huge issue. I can address question 2 and question 3 with regard to product integrity and counterfeit safety equipment. I understand that's becoming a bigger problem in North America. It's not something that we've really dealt with at the Canadian Safe Boating Council. In all of our safety messaging with regard to PFDs, we recommend, of course, that people go to a chandlery or to a boat show and try on PFDs and get properly sized for their PFD, and also make sure that they are getting a PFD for the type of boating that they're going to be doing. and of course, we train people to check the credentials on the PFD to make sure they're Transport Canada approved. I can see it could become a problem. I can see that for PFDs and good quality PFDs aren't inexpensive, and I could see why people could be drawn to e-commerce in order to get a cheap knockoff. But of course, the safety's not there. It'll be interesting. I think we should continue to work on that on the education piece, and perhaps government intervention is going to be necessary in order to regulate those devices that are probably coming from offshore. Question 4 talks about data transparency and policy decisions. So we collect in Canada data from a number of sources. So Transport Canada, responsible for boating safety, does quite a bit of their own research. They do funded research, and that could be surveys of use or behavioral surveys. We've been involved, the Canadian Safe Boating Council has been involved in a few of those. The Drowning Prevention Research Centre is probably one of the biggest sources of data. Every 10 years or so, they investigate every single recreational boating fatality in the country. And they are a collection of agencies, law enforcement, the Life Saving Society. They do a deep dive through coroner's reports, police reports, witness statements, and we get a lot of our data from them. And we then turn that data into either education or priorities or policy changes as far as regulations. For instance, there's the occurrence of recreational drownings is considerably higher risk in the north, particularly up north of 60, up in the territories. I live in Ontario. We have 250,000 lakes here and the Great Lakes. And most about half recreational boaters aren't from Ontario. And our incident of drowning is 0.2 per 100,000. But you go up to the Yukon, next to Alaska, it's 1.8 per 100,000, or the Northwest Territories next door is 2 per 100,000. So, we've Transport Canada has taken those numbers and identified issues and then funded projects, education, and training for those in the north, for instance, as an example. And we've been involved in that, and that's in everything from cold water training to PFD distribution, because there isn't a network of PFD distributors up in the north. All kinds of different projects in order to mitigate that risk. So that's kind of how they put the research into policy. And sometimes it's simpler than that. We've done surveys, behavioral surveys, where we observe boats, and then we'll stop the vessels and ask to do a survey. And we're surveying people who are wearing PFDs and on recreational boats, and those who aren't. And based on the responses that we get from those that aren't, like I can swim, or I have my PFD, but it's sitting on the seat beside me, I can grab it. We started a program called Within Reach, where it starts off as a poster safety message with an arm stretched over the side of a boat from the outside, trying to reach for a life jacket that they can't reach, and it was an interactive QR sort of training that was quite popular. But we're trying to look at the behavior and then trying to change the behavior, trying to come up with a program that will do it. Like the legislation, it does work to some degree. Our rules with regard to personal watercraft is that you basically have to wear a PFD on a personal watercraft in Canada. Otherwise, you're required to carry a whole pile of other equipment, including a PFD. And so the incidence of wearing PFDs on personal watercraft is among the highest. As I recollect, over 90%. So sometimes policymakers will look at the situation and then try to put together a policy or regulation that will help it. The other thing that they do, as far as the research goes, is they also sometimes look at, particularly the Transport Canada will look at sort of doing policy research, surveying the community, the boating community, to see what they think about different rules and different laws. And right now Transport is considering, based on their research, making mandatory wear required for children 12 and under, those operating human-powered vessels like canoes and kayaks, those being towed, and including wake surfing, and anybody operating an open deck power boat that's under 16 meters or 19.7 feet. That's not, there's no start date for that regulation, but it's something that they're considering. So it seems to be an ongoing, the data comes in, there's all kinds of ongoing research going on, and then it's a matter of really, is it an enforcement issue? Is it an education issue? Is it a policy or regulation issue? So I guess the last point was it's probably the most difficult point, was talking about measuring the impact of education and outreach. And that's got to be the hardest part of our jobs, because how do you measure the number of lives saved? You can measure to some degree behavioral change, and I think you can look at stats in the long term. I think they're trending well. They could be trending better and faster for our liking, but it is hard to do that measurement. If you have a lifeguard working on a beach, and the lifeguard reprimands 100 people for doing foolish things on the beach, did that lifeguard save a life that day? Well, it's pretty hard to measure that, and some of the work that we're doing is like that. We know that PFD or lack of PFD use or proper use is in over 80%. I think it's 78% no PFD on the latest study, plus another 5% who were misusing their PFD, involved in recreational deaths, boating deaths. So, if we can get more people wearing their life jackets and PFDs, logically we should be able to, to work down the number of fatalities. But it really is the hardest. And of course, I guess different agencies or different jurisdictions, different countries, do different kinds of research and have also different challenges. Different challenges is another issue with regard to measuring prevention, and because there's just so many variables. You have bad weather. There's just so many. Is it a good summer and there's more people boating? There's just so many. You've really got to, I think, look at long-term data to see where the trends are, and in order to measure your successes.